Good evening to you. I've drawn the curtain there to block out the light because it's too bright. Bible break, and great to have you with me once again. And we're in Genesis chapter 29. We're going to read from verse 31 of Genesis 29 through to chapter 30, verse 24. And we saw how Jacob married the two daughters of his uncle, the eldest Leah and the younger Rachel. And we're going to see all the children that came as a result of those two relationships. Jacob's children is the subheading in my NIV. So here we go then. Let's go. Let's read chapter 29, verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb. But Rachel was barren. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "It's because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." So she named him Simeon. Again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I've borne him 3 sons." So he was named Levi. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. By the way, as before, I'm leaving you the homework, as it were, that you can check out the exact meaning of all these names. But the key and the clue to the name is given in the explanation that precedes it, and then the name itself is given. Chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children?" Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my maidservant. Sleep with her, so that she can bear children for me, and that through her I too can build a family." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He's listened to my plea and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, "I've had a great struggle with my sister and I have won." So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her maidservant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "What good fortune." So she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "How happy I am. The women will call me happy." So she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the field and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too?" "Very well," Rachel said, "he can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." I'm taking it that mandrakes, whatever they are an aphrodisiac, a bit like ginger, I suppose. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. "You must sleep with me," she said. "I've hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a 5th son. Then Leah said, "God has rewarded me for giving my maidservant to my husband." So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a 6th son. Then Leah said, "God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honour, because I had borne him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her, a daughter, and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. Remembered Rachel. We're on Rachel now. He listened to her and opened her womb. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph, and what a great man he will be, as we shall see. And she said, may the Lord add to me another son, which indeed God did and will do further down the line. Unfortunately, Rachel will die during childbirth at the time of Benjamin's birth. But there we are. It's a list, obviously. Effectively, you've got the heads of the 11 tribes here. The 12th will be Benjamin, of course. 12 tribes of Israel, which will be Jacob's new name, again, just a little further down the line. Great. There's one or two things I think that we can pick up here, which are important and may come as something of a contrast to the accepted wisdom of our own day. Because here, again, to some extent, we have the blueprint and we have instruction for that which concerns family life from a biblical perspective. And the most important thing to grasp is the thing that we first read, which is that the Lord oversees all things. God oversees all things. God knows that Leah is not loved like Rachel is loved by Jacob. But he ensures that she has her honour, the thing that she seeks from her husband, according to towards the end of our reading. This time my husband will treat me with honour because I bore him 6 sons. Well, God kicks it all off with by granting Leah motherhood, granting Leah sons, children, whilst Rachel remains barren. And we see here how, whatever the fashionable thinking might be, or whatever years of feminism might have brought to us, the formula, if that's the word we want to employ, the formula which is used at the beginning of chapter 30, speaking about Rachel this time, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children. So from this biblical perspective, the man and the woman come together in marriage, of course, ideally, and they have a child, but it is the wife who bears to the husband the child. Doesn't mean to say there's no longer hers, of course, but what we are told is that she's bearing to the husband the child, and she's not using the husband in order to get a child, but she wants to bear children for her husband, so that her husband will be pleased with her and become more and more attached to her. I mean, I suppose a word of warning here. I don't know about you, but I've come across couples who have been having problems with their marriage or their relationship, and who feel that having a child will be the answer to their problems, that the child will bring a solution to the problems which they themselves are experiencing in their own relationship. That is kind of what might be implied here. But equally, you have to be careful with that one, because it could just be that the couple will end up, rather than the child bringing, the newborn bringing an answer to the couple's problems, the couple could just end up bringing all their problems or discharging even all their problems upon the newborn, who indeed in turn becomes a greater problem because the struggling couple is now struggling with the newborn child as well. You don't have children in order to save your marriage, or in order to you're both thinking that would be some magic solution to your own relationship. But it remains the case here that God oversees all things, that children are the gift of God. And as time passes, Leah believes that Jacob will become more and more attached to her because of the children, the sons that she is bearing. In verse 34, she conceived, she had another son. Now at last my husband will become attached to me because I've borne him 3 sons. Well, who wouldn't become attached to or have a certain affection for the mother of his children? Well, if he doesn't, what does that really say about him? But you see how she bears children for her husband. So it's not a case of she just wants to use, or she just wants to use a man, her husband, to have children, that they will just be hers then. They will belong to her. Her husband is kind of sidelined. At the same time, it's not a case of, the husband, he has a child with his wife and then has a child and afterwards he doesn't want to know about it. No, the family is a unit, and both husband and wife are involved in rearing and educating their children. So that's the model that we see here. God is the one who gives life, is the giver of children. Jacob gets rather upset with Rachel, who is nonetheless the wife he really loves. But when she gets upset with him, because she feels that it might have something to do with him, and that he has to choose and decide to give, whether to give her children or not. Jacob becomes angry with her, chapter 30, verse 2. Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children? Well, that wasn't a very nice thing to say. God has kept you from having children. Although it was, pretty much true up to that point. But he's certainly right to point out the first thing. Am I in the place of God? God is the giver of life. God is the taker of life. Anybody who seeks to put themselves in that place is literally playing, well, metaphorically, but nonetheless real, playing with fire. There are those, of course, who do believe that it is up to us to control population, that it is up to us to decide, or them, not us, of course, them to decide who has the right to life and who does not, and how we should all live and shall all live in the brave new world which they have projected for us. Well, such pride and arrogance is roundly denounced and warned against once again in the scriptures. And these people need to learn what it means to live and let live, because only God is ultimately in control of life and death and human destiny, and indeed their own destiny. And so it goes on. The servants become involved, and the servants have children. We can see that Rachel is not averse to, again, trying to give the situation a bit of a push by soliciting Leah for her mandrakes, not her ginger, but her mandrakes. And, do they have their desired effect? Leah herself, whose son brings the mandrakes to her, Reuben, she gives God the glory for the sons which she herself, not a servant, but she herself, the other two which she herself has, and eventually Rachel herself becomes pregnant. We are not told that it's the mandrakes, but we are told that God remembered Rachel at last, and he gave her own, not her servants again, but her own child, Joseph. And what a great one he will become. As I say, unfortunately, though, she dies. God answers her prayer for a second son, but she dies at the birth of Benjamin. Okay, mums and dads and children, and the relationship between husbands and their wives, and God's sovereignty over all. Time's marched on, so I'll leave you with these things, and I'll see you next time around.